Hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Leanne and I am the face behind Small Gestures Vintage and Crafts. So a couple of months ago, one of my first videos I posted that you guys seemed to really like was on risers. I think I made over some risers and I did them 3 or 4 different ways. And I think it was so popular because those are very useful and versatile items. And right now we are entering prime entertaining season, right? So I thought, what better than take some items in my inventory that I've thrifted and transform them into some beautiful and very functional and useful trays. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna use some IOD transfers and some incredibly beautiful decoupage papers from Roycycled Treasures. And we're gonna make over some of my thrifted items, and one of them, I kid you not, is probably one of my favorite things that I have ever upcycled so far. So stick around and let's do it. My first project this week is this lovely little tray that I thrifted a while back. It's a good size. It's in decent shape. It's just got a few little chips on it on the exterior. And I originally thought I was just going to take some stir sticks and line the bottom, stain them, and then paint the tray white, and that would be it. So I had to cut them. They were obviously too long. So I actually taped 3 of them together and then marked them, measured them, marked them where they needed to be cut, and took them to my miter saw. After they were all cut, I just wanted to get rid of the sharp edges, so I just gave them a quick sand and did the same thing to the tray to smooth it out. Now, like I said, I wanted to paint it. I was going to paint the edges. So this is Dixie Belle's Boss. It blocks stains and odors, and it's good for slick surfaces. Because this is a super slick surface, I didn't want to take any chances with the paint not sticking. So you put 2 coats on, you put 1 coat on, wait a couple hours, put another coat on, and then let it sit for 24 hours. So I did that inside and out. I thought it would be easier to stain them as one big piece, so I'm just taping all of the stir sticks together on the back. And instead of going with a traditional brown stain, I decided to do a green whitewash. So this is Weeping Willow by Dixie Belle. It's just their chalk paint. I watered it down really good and just gave them a paint wash. And then I decided to do, of course, the sides. So it really didn't matter if they were taped together on the back or not, because I ended up taking it apart anyway. Once I saw the sticks in the bottom of the tray, I knew I didn't want to just paint it white. And I remembered when I was in Wisconsin, I picked up a whole bunch of Roycycled decoupage paper, and this one is called Wallpaper, and it's just gorgeous. I love it. But the greens do not match at all. So I pulled out the same green paint, but I added some Summer Crush by DIY just to tone it down a little bit and give it more of an olivey undertone. So it had been 24 hours since I put the Boss on, so now I'm going in. This is Dixie Belle's Silk Paint in drop cloth. And so I'm doing the inside and the outside and cutting off strips for each of the sides for the interior of the tray. When I started on one side, I initially was going to start my starter strip on the right side and then work over to the left. But you'll see here in a minute when I went to push the paper up, I felt like I was going to get a big wrinkle in the middle. So I changed a little bit and I decided to start my starter strip at the very bottom and work upwards and outwards so I could minimize any wrinkling that I would get. And then I just spritzed the paper and smoothed it along the edge. And I used DIY's liquid patina as my decoupage medium. Because the papers were going to meet, of course, in each of the four corners, I did the two opposite sides and let them dry good, so then I could trim the paper at the corners and then go in with the two end pieces. After all the sides were done and it was thoroughly dry, then I just came in with my finger sander and in a downward motion just sanded off the top edge and took off the excess paper. Now the stir sticks, there was probably just over a 1/4 inch or so, maybe a 1/2 inch gap. And I didn't want to cut a big chunk, that big of a chunk off of one of the stir sticks. So I'm actually going around with some twine and hot gluing it to the bottom of the tray. And I misjudged a little bit and I was still a little wide on my stir sticks. And I know there was probably an easier way to do this, but it was like 10:30 at night and I wanted to get this part done. So I'm like scoring probably 1/8 of an inch off of one of the stir sticks. And then I realized I had a little chisel so I could pop off that extra little piece so it would fit snugly and securely in the bottom of the tray. The next morning, I sanded it smooth and put it up against one of the edges, up against the twine, and there you go, perfect fit. It was like a puzzle. And I decided to darken up the green. So this is Sweet Pickin's Dark Oil Wax, and look at the difference between the two. It just makes the wood, oh, it looks so yummy. It's just, I love the finish on there. And it was the perfect match to that paper. I did not have any E6000, so I'm actually just going in with some liquid nails because I did not want those bottom boards going anywhere. After I glued those pieces down, I set them with some paint cans on top just to weight them down, and then gave a finish sanding just to smooth everything out. And then I distressed the edges just a little bit. Prior to gluing the twine down, I put Dixie Belle's flat top coat on about the bottom inch of the decoupage paper, and now I'm just finishing it off. For my second project this week, I wanted to take this little wooden wall hanging that I'd had in my inventory for quite a while, and someone worked very hard on this back in 1981, but given the age, I think that explains why the varnish on the front is so yellowed. But I got to work peeling and scraping. I used my heat gun. I wanted to scrape off as much of that old varnish as I could before I needed to sand anything because I knew it would just gum up my sander. I am not going to lie, it was very satisfying to scrape off these long strips of that yellowed varnish. After I cleaned it up with my hand sander, then I went back outside and gave it a coat of black spray paint. I just used some Rust-Oleum 2X. I wanted a kind of a chippy farmhouse look for this, so I started off with a black base and then topped it with my favorite treatment, which is just a good old wax candle, because the paint will not adhere to the wax, so you can scrape the paint back and give you that chippy look without having to sand it. And this is Dixie Belle's Silk Mineral Paint in drop cloth. So I think I used about 2.5 coats of paint, and after it was thoroughly dry, then I just came along with my metal edge scraper and pulled back to scrape off the paint. And like I said, where the wax is, it just pulls the paint right up. And I just love the distressed finish that it gives without the mess of having to sand it. I always like to give it a finish sanding just to smooth any brush strokes out and just give a really smooth touch to the piece. Label Ephemera is the name of this IOD transfer, and it is an old one back when they used to have their transfers in the cardboard tubes. After I think I have figured out my placement for this little border and the words, then I need to drill some holes for those little black farmhouse handles. And I picked those up at Lowe's, by the way. I think it was like $1.20 each. I admit, I've had these transfers for so long, I was worried initially how they would adhere, but they went down perfectly, just like transfers that I would have bought yesterday. After the border was all down and burnished well into the surface, then it was time for the placement of the wording with my very scientific eyeballing that I do. So I guess after I decided on my layout, I stopped recording and I forgot to hit record again. So I didn't record any of the transfers being applied, and we're gonna skip right to the application of the top coat, which is Dixie Belle's flat top coat. My third and final project this week is this galvanized tray, large galvanized tray. I love it. I picked it up at a yard sale just actually like 2 weeks ago for a couple bucks. It's got some beautiful rust on the outside that I loved. So I gave it a good cleaning and then sprayed it with a couple coats of shellac inside and out because of that rust that was there. The bottom of this tray, I wanted to decoupage and use a transfer, but the sides I wanted to paint. So I came in with Dixie Belle Slick Stick, and I went ahead and did the bottom and the insides. Again, you have to give it a couple coats and then let it sit overnight. This paper is again by Royce, and it is called Corrugated Metal, and it is everything that I love. The rusty look, the teal blues and greens. I decided to pick out the darker blue to paint the edges of the tray. So this is Stormy Seas. It's the chalk paint by Dixie Belle. I began with my starter strip on the left-hand side here, spritzed my water, and the Decopage Medium I'm using is DIY's Liquid Patina, and just smoothing the paper out. And again, I love, after I get it down, I love going over it with a baggie. I have issues with saran wrap. It sticks to my hand, so I just love sticking my hand in a baggie and smoothing it out that way. It eliminates my hand tearing it or getting glue on it or anything like that, because sometimes I can be kind of a messy crafter. I let it sit for several hours to dry thoroughly, and then just came in with a sharp X-Acto knife just to trim it right around the edge and remove that excess. And then this is Joie de Roses. I saw a video that Royce did where she upcycled a door and used this same paper with this transfer, and I fell in love. So I knew that was going to have to be my combination for this one. I did trim some pieces here and there so it would fit in the tray the way that I wanted, and they're certainly not going to go to waste, because if I don't use them elsewhere in this project, then they will most definitely be saved for another. After I decided on my placement, I just peeled the back off of the transfer and pressed it down and started on that edge, that little leaf that was going to wrap up onto the side of the tray first, and got it pressed down good, and then just came in with my transfer stick. And boy, these transfers stick so beautifully to smooth surfaces, metal, to the decoupage paper, glass. They're so easy to work with. After your transfer is adhered down and completely released from the carrier sheet, then you just rub over it. It's called burnishing, just to make sure that there are no wrinkles or air bubbles. So after I painted it dark blue, I then came in and dry brushed some Apothecary on top just for a little dimension, and I wasn't crazy about that. So then I came in with some white paint, and I think I went a little too heavy-handed. I wasn't crazy about that. So what I decided to do was just take some clear wax into the grooves, and I'm using a powder by Dixie Belle, and it's actually, this one is just called Dirt. And it really kind of grunges it up. The powder sticks to the wax and gives you more of a dirty, grungy look. I really wanted to bring in some different texture for the handles. I didn't want to leave them metal, so I decided to take some twine and I just hot glued one edge and wrapped around the handle. I only glued it in a couple of places and then just wrapped it around really tight and then glued the other side. And I really like the look it gives. It gives a different texture, and now I'm super happy with it. So there we are. Leave me a comment. Let me know which project was your favorite this week. Mine, hands down, was the floral tray. Thanks again for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. If you know someone that would enjoy my content, please feel free to share the video. And I would so appreciate if you like my videos, if you subscribe and like. It really does help a small channel and a small business. Until next week, take care.